It did the same thing with Katrina. So what are we talking about? A kind of artificial intelligence that's tapping into a universal mind? I mean, we're not quite sure about this, but the WebBot likewise has prophesied global catastrophe in the year 2012.
2012, wow. Then you talk about 2012 and the solar maximum. Tell us about that.
You know, and I thought this was so interesting because this is a little bit of a foot dancing by NASA, in my opinion, because, you know, this movie came out the year 2012.
Yes.
And it's a special effects spectacular. It takes basically every worst case scenario in the world, you know, that's been talked about for 2012 and plus creates some new ones about how the world's basically going to fall apart in the year 2012. And NASA, because the film starts out talking about solar flares, solar maximum, NASA was taking issue with that because they knew the movie makers were playing off of a report that had been put forward in 2006 by NASA, saying that we will reach solar maximum the end of 2012 or the beginning of 2013, which really goes along with the Zohar's dating September 2012 through the end of 2013. And it was unprecedented. Here's NASA, they're spending money, building websites, they've got spokesperson, they've got their Astrobiology Institute department out there taking issue with a movie. I mean, when has a government agency like NASA ever took something so serious? But they took real issue with the viral marketing program behind the movie, saying they're taking advantage of people's fears about the end of the long count calendar.
Don't all movies take advantage of people's fears?
Well, yeah, I would imagine they do, but here was what I thought was a bit disingenuous on the part of NASA, was that it really was based on one of their own reports in 2006 that said when we do reach solar maximum, it certainly could affect the Earth in electromagnetic or whatever ways that could, at a minimum, throw us off grid, throw us off the electric grid, which could then lead to certain levels of chaos.
Sure.
Their report was supported in December of 2008 by the American Sciences Academy, which wrote a 152-page report that not only said that NASA was correct, but actually took it to whole new heights, saying we not only could be knocked off grid, but we might be off grid for as long as 3 years. Well, I remember, and you will too, what happened in California some years ago when part of the city went off grid for just 2 or 3 days, and they almost burnt the city down.
Absolutely.
And that trucker, you know, they beat him till he had brain damage, and now imagine if the whole world went off grid for 3 years. Communications are down.
Yes.
It would just be, it'd be chaos.
It would be.
And one of the shows I did, they said it would be like getting knocked back into the Wild West. I said, oh no, it'd be a lot worse because they knew how to survive on the land and we don't.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah, and by the way, if you are overwhelmed by the language and the ideas, be assured the book is put together in such a way that it's an easy read, it flows. I love the way this pulls together seemingly disparate ideas. As Bible students, we tend to look at the world in one way, and we hear that there are other people out there with other ideas, the Illuminati and the various esoteric schools of thought, and we hear about these things in such a way that's sometimes confusing. I think you'll find this kind of takes out a little of the confusion, puts it in order. You've done a great job of bringing together East and West, I think, into the perspective of the Christian.
Well, and you talk about, you know, these different ideas from different disciplines. That was another thing. As I went along, I wound up with over 6,000 pages of research material.
Wow.
And then it's how do you compress this all down into a book that's, you know, of a readable length, because I assure you I'm not popular enough that anybody wants to read a 6,000-page book by Tom Horn. So it was, you know, how to do that. But it was also that it wasn't just ancient prophecies or shamans, but scientists talking about the year 2012 as holding importance. And when you look at Bible prophecy, there is that mixture. You have the prophets who are talking about how knowledge will increase, science will change and adapt, but also talking about, you know, geological things over which we have no control, you know, the winds and the seas, wave. The year 2012 seems to also be a confluence of not just prophets and prophecy, but of scientists who are pointing at this date as being important.
I want you to get this book. You can order it from us for $15.95. Just call the phone number at the bottom of your screen, 1-800-475-1111. When you talk to the operator, tell them that you'd like to order the book Apollyon Rising 2012, $15.95 plus shipping and handling. And your purchase of this book will help us to pay for our time and keep coming your way with our studies in biblical prophecy. So please get the book today, will you? And also I'd like to mention our magazine, Prophecy in the News. This is the January 2010 edition. The February magazine is out now as well, and it has the book Apollyon Rising 2012 on page 4, and I'd like for you to get this as well. So when you call, ask for the magazine as well, okay? Well, this has been an exciting time, hasn't it, Gary?
It has, J.R. I'd like to close with a Bible verse. I think it's appropriate that we get a little scripture in here today. Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians 2:7, "For the mystery of iniquity doth already work." And I think that's what we're talking about today, the mystery of iniquity, all of these strange dates and esoteric schools of thought. But he goes on to say, "Only he who now letteth," that is, who now hinders, will continue to hinder until he be taken out of the way. We Christians believe that we are a restraining force, keeping this esoteric school of thought from rising to dominance. But when we're gone, it should experience a rapid surge upward. What do you think?
Well, I think so, and hopefully some of the work that we've done will predate us.
What is amazing to me is this name Apollyon. It is the Greek god Apollo, and he seems to figure very prominently in end-time events. The book of Revelation calls this star that falls from heaven, this fallen angel who opens the bottomless pit and brings out all these hordes of demonic creatures to torment men for 5 months, is Apollo.
Right.
Amazing. Tell us about Apollo.
Yeah, you know, in Scripture, as both you and Gary have also quoted Scripture, that this spiritual presence comes to the earth at almost the apex of when biblical prophecy begins to unfold rapid fire, and this presence of the Antichrist comes forward into the world. What we learn by it being named Apollo or Apollyon is that it is a destroyer demon. Its intention is destruction. But when you study ancient history, you learn it's been around a long time in various personages. Was known as Nimrod, was known as Osiris, was known as Apollo. And now, what does this have to do with the book? Because when I made that discovery, this connection, perhaps connecting to the Great Seal of the United States of America, one thing I'd already known and had written about before was the Novus Ordo Seclorum. This is taken from the Aeneid. This is taken from ancient literature, from the Cumae Sibyl and her prophecy of the return of Apollo at the end of time.
Wow.